So when I first saw the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K photo floating around the different Blackmagic forums and things like that, I thought it was a joke. I couldn't believe that Blackmagic was actually making a 4K camera. And I had actually seen before people sending out like fake Pocket Cinema Camera 4K prototype photos. And I just didn't believe it because everybody wanted it. You know, like everybody talked about it. Everybody wanted to see a 4K Pocket Cinema Camera. So when it finally came, I couldn't believe it. And now that it's here, I am just extremely grateful and super excited to see what people will do with this camera. And I can't wait to get one in my hands. But I just first want to say thank you to Blackmagic because you have given us what we've asked for. And I am blown away by what you have given us. And I can't wait to try it out. But right now, just based off the specs and from what I've seen, I'm going to give y'all the 4 pros and 4 cons of the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. So first I'll start with the pros. Number 1 is the price. And, you know, those of us who've had Blackmagic cameras for a while, we tend to kind of overlook this aspect because it's always fairly priced. That's why those who are dedicated to Blackmagic design products, that's why it's a big reason why we stick with them, is because of the value we get for them. And so we can't overlook the price on this one. You know, even though we have our pros and cons, we have, you know, our plus and minuses on what's good with the different cameras, you can't overlook a $1,300 price tag with this kind of camera. I mean, the Pocket Cinema Camera first version was pretty groundbreaking for being the price it was. But now, for this one to be $1,300 with the new additions, it's just too good of a value. And second is, of course, 4K resolution. I'm torn on 4K. I don't have a problem shooting without it. And, you know, honestly, working with raw footage especially, if I up-res to 4K online for mediums like YouTube and Vimeo, if I up-res my footage, you're not gonna tell the difference with other 4K cameras. You know, even if I'm shooting in 1080 and I up-res it to 4K, if I'm in a raw codec, online you're gonna have a really tough time telling the difference in sharpness between a 1080p and a 4K. So I'm torn on it, but I get it, you know, especially if you're a freelancer or something like that. Clients ask for 4K and you want to be able to deliver that. And it's a big deal. Now, the reason it's second is because also it's going to be insane data. I used to work with the Blackmagic production camera, the 4K, and I tried shooting in 4K RAW once, and the data was absolutely ridiculous. And so, you know, it's still a great thing. You can use it if you have the means, if you have the firepower behind your computer, but it may not be like the biggest selling point for me. The third pro is ISO. Now this to me is just absolutely insane. 25,600 ISO is so high in comparison to the 1600 that the Pocket Cinema camera used to have, that the first version had, and that 1600 wasn't usable even. This is just such a huge jump, and it will, like, despite what people said about it being not being a low light camera, I still felt like the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema camera did pretty well in low light. I never had a problem with it in low light, especially with the Speedbooster. But now to have the ISO able to go up to 25,000, that's going to be insane. That is going to be just insane. So I'm so happy that's happening. And it's going to make a huge difference, especially if you have a Speedbooster. So the fourth pro is 120 FPS. This one was probably the biggest for me personally, but I know some people, some people use it, some people don't, but being able to do slow-mo, that's incredible. Now, you can't do 120 in 4K, but you'll be able to do it in 1080, and I think you can do 60 FPS in 4K. But either way, being able to do slow-mo on this camera now, when the first version only had 30 FPS, so no slow-mo capability at all, it's amazing. It's going to add some like incredible utility to your footage, and you don't have to get any other cameras. It's right in there. And so just some quick honorable mentions on the pros. You get Davinci Resolve as a pro, so that's insane. It's such a good deal for $1,300. They give you the full Davinci Resolve Studio. They didn't do that with the first Pocket Cinema camera, so amazing. RAW 3:1, that's going to be an incredible codec. It's going to speed up RAW workflow, and so you'll get most of the benefits, but you'll be able to be faster, so that's crazy. Last honorable mention for the pros is an HDMI, a full-size HDMI input. And the reason that wasn't on the top of my list, because normally, like with the first camera, it would have been full HDMI. Yeah, definitely would have been. But the reason why it's not on this one is because you may not need it. With the screen, the display that the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K has, it looks really nice. It's, I think, a 5-inch screen, so it's big, it looks bright, and so you may be able to get away with not having an external monitor. So the HDMI, input might not be as important. So, that's cool. But hey, you have it if you want it, so that's awesome. So now 4 cons, or I want to reword that to like 4 possible cons or disappointments, because these are really things that I know I wanted to see Blackmagic do more with the camera, but I was more disappointed than like that's not okay. So the first con is the battery solution they chose, and they chose I think it's the LPE6 batteries, which are, I believe, primarily Canon's line of batteries that they use. They are better. They're better than the EN EL22s that were on the first version of the Pocket Cinema cameras. But for me, it's not a whole lot better. I think you're going to be able to get maybe, 20 or 30 more minutes out of the batteries more than you used to. So sometimes I'll record longer than that, and I'm probably gonna have to find a solution for it. The second con is the MFT mount, and I was just, as a Canon user, I was really hoping for an EF mount. Sorry, that's just kind of me being selfish. I would have loved if they would have came out with the EF and of course a Nikon version, but just a different mount, so all my lenses would just fit right on. Which leads me to the next con. And this one's lower on the list, but it hurts me a lot more. It hits me directly. But I know it's not going to hurt everybody. You're not going to be able to use the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Speedbooster that you used on your first Pocket Cinema camera. So that really sucks for me, because the Speedbooster is like, I think I paid $400 or $500 for a used one. It's awesome. On the Pocket Cinema camera, it's really, really nice to use. I love how it makes my lens faster, and I love that it changes the crop factor. But on the Pocket Cinema Camera 4K, it's not gonna be able to do that. The crop factor, from what I've read, it's gonna be messed up, so it's not gonna look right. You're gonna have vignetting, which totally sucks, and you're probably gonna have to get another converter if all you have is the, you know, first version of the Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera Speedbooster. So my fourth and final con, and I say this one very lightly because I was very happy with it on the first camera, but I was a little disappointed that we are sticking with 13 stops of dynamic range. And I say that lightly because it's a good amount of dynamic range still. That's still totally worth it to get that camera. But I really wanted to see a bump in that. That was what I got excited for when I saw that, you know, it was coming out and that it was real and that it was 4K. I was like, oh my gosh, what is the dynamic range going to be? That was like my first question. What are they going to do with the dynamic range? Like, what's the price? What's the dynamic range? And they stuck with the same one, 13, same as the last camera. But again, you know, it's a good amount of dynamic range, so I can't, you know, complain about it too much. Also, I have read on a few forums that they're going to look to do a firmware update that can take it to 15 stops. Now that's totally gossip and I, you know, have no idea if that's true, but they have done cool things like that before. Like with the micro cinema camera, they added the raw footage feature to it later down the road. So, you know, possibly there could be a firmware update, you know, maybe a year or so down the road where we get 15 stops of dynamic range. So that would be unbelievable, especially for $1,300, because you would be getting so much firepower. But you know, that it's still 13 stops is still awesome. And the one honorable mention I have on the cons are filters. I'm pretty sure you're still going to have to use IR filters and ND filters with the camera. It doesn't have an internal ND, and I don't think the sensor is coded. That I'm not sure of, and I haven't seen anybody talk about it, but I don't think the sensor is coded, so we're still going to need IR filters when we're shooting out in the daylight. And of course we'll need ND filters because there's no internal, but not a, you know, a huge problem, especially if you already have some for your lenses. So that was my 4 pros and 4 cons for the new Blackmagic Pocket Cinema Camera 4K. I'm super excited for it, and I'm so excited to see everybody shooting with it, seeing footage from it. It's gonna be amazing, and I cannot wait to have one. So thank you guys for watching. If you liked this video, please like, subscribe, leave some comments. I try and, you know, comment to everyone who has something to say, so I appreciate it. Thank you guys for watching.